educational purposes only. This is not legal advice. Follow OSHA 29 CFR 1910.146 and consult qualified safety/legal professionals for your facility. Reclassification looks like a shortcut until one new hazard turns it into a fatal mistake. By the end, you'll know when reclassification is legal, when it's not, and the exact decision steps OSHA expects. To meet OSHA's baseline definition of a confined space, an area must meet 3 physical criteria. It must be large enough for a worker to bodily enter, it must have limited or restricted means of entry or exit, and it must not be designed for continuous human occupancy. But a standard confined space upgrades to a permit-required confined space, or PRCS, when it introduces serious physical or atmospheric threats to the entrant. OSHA triggers this permit-required designation if the space contains a hazardous atmosphere, holds material with the potential for engulfing an entrant, or has an internal configuration, like inwardly converging walls or a downward-sloping floor, that could trap or asphyxiate a worker. Under Standard 1910.146, safety professionals face a strict binary choice: either absolutely prevent entry into these environments or build a highly regulated full permit program. Downgrading a space through what the industry calls reclassification is an exception to this rule, and it is entirely conditional. To legally reclassify a space to non-permit status under paragraph C7, the space must possess 0 actual or potential atmospheric hazards. If the air poses any risk, you cannot reclassify. For all physical and mechanical risks inside that space, the standard demands absolute hazard elimination. Elimination means the hazard is completely severed from the space. You cannot simply mitigate or control the risk while the threat remains physically present. One method to achieve absolute elimination is applying rigorous Lockout/Tagout protocols to all mechanical equipment and energy sources connected to the area. Another method is the physical isolation of chemical or liquid flows by blanking or blinding the pipes, creating a solid barrier that entirely blocks materials from entering the workspace. Crucially, hazards must be eliminated without requiring a worker to enter the space to perform the elimination. If entry is necessary to make the space safe, that initial entry must be executed under full permit conditions. Once achieved, this reclassification remains valid only for as long as those remain perfectly eliminated. Reclassification under C7 is a temporary, volatile legal status based on real-time operational conditions. It is never a permanent physical property of the tank or pit. When an employer cannot completely eliminate hazards, they may look to paragraph C5. These alternate procedures are strictly reserved for spaces where the only hazard is an actual or potential hazardous atmosphere. This pathway relies on hazard control rather than hazard elimination. Forcing clean air into a space only manages the atmospheric hazard. If the ventilation stops, the physical threat immediately returns. Continuous forced air ventilation must be used to direct clean air into the immediate areas where employees will be present, effectively preventing the accumulation of toxic vapors or explosive gases. This interface shows mandatory pre-entry testing under C5. Before entering, test the internal atmosphere with a calibrated instrument. Oxygen must be measured first, followed immediately by combustible gases, then toxic contaminants, in that exact order. The atmosphere must then be continuously monitored. If a hazardous condition is detected at any point, workers must instantly evacuate the space. Because K5 relies on active technological control rather than physical elimination, it demands unrelenting vigilance. A single equipment malfunction can lead to catastrophic failure. You've seen how reclassification should work. Next is why it fails in the real world, when new hazards show up mid-job. The first major failure point is linguistic and technical. Safety teams confuse hazard control with hazard elimination. Illegally labeling a ventilated space as a C7 reclassification creates a false sense of security, causing teams to strip away required safety protocols. The fix is rigid adherence to the standard. If you rely on a fan to make the air safe, you must use K5 alternate procedures or execute a full permit. The second problem occurs when new operational variables are introduced into a previously reclassified space. Bringing in chemical cleaning solvents or starting hot work generates fumes. This instantly voids the space's safe status by introducing a new atmospheric hazard. Establish hard stop work triggers. Before any new tool or chemical crosses the plane of the space, the reclassification must be automatically revoked. The third failure point lies in flawed atmospheric testing plans. This diagram illustrates gas stratification. Testing only the air near the access hatch misses lethal accumulations because heavier toxic gases like hydrogen sulfide pool at the bottom, while lighter gases rise. Always test the top, the middle, and the bottom by dropping the probe down to check all levels, and trend that data over time. Problem 4 stems from dangerous assumptions regarding emergency response and rescue teams. When managers declare a space reclassified, they often dismiss the attendant and the standby rescue team to save on labor costs, leaving workers entirely helpless if conditions unexpectedly change. You must clearly define rescue protocols for every entry. Full permit operations require trained attendants positioned outside the space, specifically capable of summoning immediate help. The final problem is desk compliance. Supervisors filling out reclassification forms from an office without physically verifying the condition of the space. The required fix is a mandatory physical audit. A competent person must physically verify all isolation and lockout measures at the actual entry point before any paperwork is signed. Treating reclassification as an administrative loophole to save money creates an illusion of safety. Skipping a rigorous physical audit directly causes multi-employer worksite fatalities. Navigating Standard 1910.146 requires a strict forensic workflow. The mandatory first step for evaluating any permit-required confined space is identifying all potential physical and atmospheric hazards. This chart maps compliance. If every hazard is completely eliminated without entry, it branches to C7 reclassification. If exclusively atmospheric, controlled by continuous ventilation, it branches to C5 procedures. Otherwise, implement a full permit program. Regardless of the path, every operation needs a kill switch. Any unpredicted event, a strange odor, a process alarm, or the introduction of a new chemical acts as that kill switch, requiring immediate evacuation of the space and a total reassessment of the hazards. Does your site use C7, C5, or full permits most often? Tell us in the comments. If you want to learn more about workplace safety and OSHA rules, subscribe to HSEstudy.